Well, hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Keys to the Shop, where we give you insights, inspiration, and the tools you need to grow as a coffee service professional. My name is Chris DiFirio. I'm your host for the show, and thank you so much for being here. Don't forget to subscribe to Keys to the Shop on YouTube, Spotify, Overcast, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts, really. You can find this show even on Audible, I guess. Yeah, there's lots of I don't know does anyone out there listen on Audible? It's kind of a roundabout way to do it. Well, anyway, I'm grateful to have you on, or with me at least. And don't forget to subscribe because you will stay updated with new content as it comes out. But also, you can search the database of episodes. We have over 900 episodes that you can search the topic and probably find something that will help you for what you're looking for in coffee. That's why we started this show 8 years ago. January 3rd, it'll be 8 years of Keys to the Shop, to provide a resource for coffee shops that will help you thrive, help you as a person and you as the owner thrive, but also the business and the experience that people have as staff members as well as the customers. That's what we're about here at Keys to the Shop. So check it out. And don't forget that sharing these episodes really helps other coffee shops become aware of Keys to the Shop. I would love it if every coffee shop in the world knew about this show and had an opportunity to interact with the content. And that really just happens when you share these episodes, and especially on social media. So thank you, everybody, for doing that. And also, Keys to the Shop offers consulting and coaching. I want to mention that at the top of every episode because, sometimes when you're at the end of an episode and you think, okay, we're going to implement some of these things, but you might be thinking, I need some help. And you may have had that conversation with yourself many, many times, or with others. Maybe we should bring somebody in to help us clarify, to help us walk through the process of improving our systems, improving our quality or our culture, or even just walking with us as a coach and a consultant through the opening process of a coffee shop. That's what Keys to the Shop Consulting is all about. And we're onboarding new clients in 2025 right now. So if you're interested, just send me an email, chris@keystotheshop.com. There's also a link in the show notes where you can click to set up a discovery call, and we can talk all about how Keys to the Shop might be able to help you. Maybe it's a good fit, us working together. But let's talk. Now, today's episode is brought to you by the wonderful folks at Arto Brick, and that's arto.com, and at Arto Brick on Instagram for your stone and tile and hard surface needs. And also the folks over at the Pacific Barista Series, pacificfoodservice.com, plant-based beverages that are second to none. We're going to talk a little bit more about them later in the episode. But right now, I want to kind of get into the meat of our content here. Just start into the subject that we're here to discuss, which is the new year is coming up. And when you're listening to this, it's going to be, well, I don't know. I think it's probably right before Christmas is hitting. And you probably have already put a lot of thought into what's going to happen in the new year. And maybe some of those thoughts are organized and maybe some of them are not. I always think about things. You're the same as me. You always think about things. But do we plan? Do we strategize? Do we create a plan of executing on the things that we're thinking about? I would encourage you, before we dive into the 7 areas that I believe will really transform your business and help you in 2025. So, what I would encourage you to do is look at your year as something that you can control. Of course, there are things outside of your control. There are things that you just have to deal with as they come up. But the more you start to use a calendar, use a notepad, and start to execute on the plans that you have, and just have goals for the year, articulate a set of goals for 2025 and then 2026 and so forth. Really, the best thing is, what do you want to do in 5 years? And then reverse engineer that. What needs to be true in this quarter? That's a good way to put it. There's a book called, I believe it's called The 12-Week Year, where we basically take our yearly plans and we shrink it down to a quarter. And at least if you don't want to take the year goal and put it in the first quarter, you can at least look at your calendar as, okay, what do we want to be doing this quarter, the next quarter, and so forth? What are the known things that are going to come up every year. They come up. Let's put those in place, but then let's curate our experience as a business and put the other things around those known quantities. The fact that we're going to have students returning in this next semester, that's a known quantity, so we can plan around that. That's what I mean. And as you hear me talk about the areas of focus here, I would encourage you to ask yourself the question, what does it look like for me to put that into action in my cafe? And if you just choose one behavior that you apply to the daily life of your business as you yourself, doing it, and then helping others do that thing, that will be enough. The thing that gets me in trouble is I have these grand ambitions that it can be this all or nothing thought. Like, we're going to just totally transform and upend our business. It's way more motivating to think about complete transformation than it is gradual evolution. So even when I use the word transform your business, it evokes this idea of extreme differences that are taking place. And really, you're so close to it. It's kind of like when you don't see one of your nieces or nephews for a year or two, and then you see them, you're like, oh my gosh, they're so different. Their parents haven't necessarily noticed. They may notice, like I know my son's about to turn 11. He looks different, of course. I see him every day though, and I can't necessarily see in contrast the way somebody else can. And so you've got to make sure that you understand that, because you can get disheartened by the idea that you're not seeing the change for yourself. That's why sometimes you have to rely on the feedback of others to know, is this making a difference? Because you're so close to the work, it's hard to know if it really is. And so each of these 7 things, I think you're probably doing. You're probably, in fact, you might be doing it well, but there might be an element where you can level up. And I don't mean level up as in do it like somebody else does it because that looks cool, or do it because I said you should do it. But what is the natural next step in the maturation of that habit, of that area of the business? We have a whole episode called Organizational Self-Knowledge, and I'll put the link to that in the show notes. That might be a helpful primer for when you sit down to write things, because the reason why you do something can't just be because you feel like it is reflexive. Like, we have to grow. We have to grow, grow, grow. We have to scale, scale, scale. I've got to make this decision. I got to bring in that coffee. We have to have these items and this merch. When you start doing that without very good reasons, then you start to lose the identity of your business, and you achieve somebody else's goals. You achieve somebody else's why. And then that just creates a bigger or worse why for you, which is, why are we doing this? You start to doubt. There's a why that is a doubt, and there's a why that is our reason. So you want the reason why, the inspirational why, not the I don't even know why I bother. So that's the intentionality that you need to bring to this conversation. And so the last thing I'll say here is that you've got to view yourself as sort of an operations barista, a experiential barista. You are crafting and dialing in the experience that people have, not with the coffee, so to speak, but with the business, with the coffee shop that they go to and the coffee shop they work in. It's very ethereal, the idea that I'm talking about here. It's easier to view an object, right, and say, well, I am curating the quality of this object. But your business as an idea is formed and shaped by the deft maneuvering and purposeful formation that you apply to it, the pressure you apply to it. Just like pottery, you've got to have that resistance to help it take shape. And the bigger it is, the more your actions translate to reactions in the medium itself. That's why it's so hard. My wife is a potter. I know this, and I tried once or twice, and it was really frustrating. I am not a potter. I might be able to get good at it at some point, but I don't know. But the point is that I know for a fact that large scale pots, like the big ones, and they are really hard to do. You can't, as a new potter, make something that big. In your cafe, it's the same thing. The bigger you get, the more of a reaction the medium has to the pressure you apply, and you got to be that much better at that level to know your medium. You have to understand. You've got to have gone from small to large, and that's why I'm encouraging you to practice in small ways these things. Okay, so let's get right into it. First, I want you to focus on presence. Presence. So each one of these areas is one word. So the first word is presence. Presence is, it can mean many different things. One, of course, is you are there. The idea of Gemba Kaizen is Gemba is a tenet of the idea of Kaizen, which is Gemba being taking a walk or being there on the floor to see what's actually happening before you start to manage and lead what you think is happening. So, because what you think is, you have cognitive biases and you have assumptions and you have a glasses that are either tinted in the direction of overly positive or overly negative. So you've got to be there to uh, look and see what's actually happening, to get the full facet, all the facets of the business, whether that's related to the speed with which people are moving, or the quality of the beverage, or the hospitality and the feel in the cafe when it's busy, the cleanliness behind the bar. There's all sorts of areas. But I think presence is huge, and presence authority is either you're going to be there as the owner, which, by the way, you should be planning on being there in some very practical form as a contributor to the culture and the inspiration of those you lead, even if you're not dependent upon as a workaday barista. I'm not asking you to be there simply to, I don't want to say lord it over. Maybe you're just perched and you're watching and you're trying to see if things are going right. And people are just like, can you just not be here? Because it's kind of a bummer and it feels like we were getting a lot of anxiety. So if you're going to be there, and I think you should, and make your presence known, it is as a cheerleader, a celebration of those customers and staff that you have. It is a facilitator of their success. It's somebody who is basically, you're the face of the organization at some level. And this idea that you don't ever have to be there in your cafe, I think, is in some fashion, I think it's possible for you to run a coffee shop from behind the scenes and make it work really, really well. Um, but not as well as your presence contributing something that only you can. I don't really like the idea of a future of coffee shops where the owners are constantly trying to get out of their coffee shops. Why did you start a coffee shop in the first place? Wasn't it the reason at some level to be there in the coffee shop? There has to be something that you embrace. You have to be in the business. You can work on the business and still be in the business. Now, working in the business, the Michael Gerber thing with the E Myth Revisited, understandably, there is a limit to how much you should be doing. We even have an episode called Should You Be Behind the Bar Right Now? And yeah, you shouldn't perpetually be the one running to get milk, being the one to always take the trash out, and other little jobs that really the business that's telling you, hey, we need systems, we need delegation. Next week's shift break is going to be about the delegation dip and how to manage a little that aspect of delegation that's a downgrade in potentially performance at first. But the point is that I don't believe that you should just be an absentee owner. I am not somebody who promotes that particular kind of ownership. And I think it's led to a lot less of an enjoyable experience for a lot of people. Um, Of course, if you're a terrible person, then nobody wants to see you. If you're the bad news manager and it's like, okay, keep your distance. But I have a feeling you're not that person. And there is something that you have to contribute to the business that I think is valuable. So you got to figure out what that is. Get yourself that owner's job description going and figure out what's your highest contribution in your business. Now, if you're not the everyday manager, and at a certain level, you probably shouldn't be the manager of all the baristas, right? And you have the right to choose on purpose that you might actually be that person. Your business model could be such that I love coffee shops. I want to work in coffee shops. I am the manager and owner of this place, and I love owning and managing. I love working behind the bar with my baristas, and that's the way I'm going to do it forever. And there are people who do that as long as you're choosing that. But if you think, okay, well, I want a management team because we do have 3 cafes and I'm being stretched thin, you do need to have some kind of a specialized management presence in the cafe that can be a specialist in that culture. Each cafe is its own unique culture, even though it shares the color schemes and fonts and everything else of your brand and your coffees and menu and musical choices and stuff. It is its own little expression, an offshoot within the family of your business. And so a person who manages that cafe has the opportunity that a person who manages 3 cafes has a harder time doing, which is specializing in that team, those people, managing that person and their work and how they work with each other and communicate to customers and the operations of that unique space. You need that kind of specialized presence. And so, if you want to transform things in 2025, focus on that word presence. What does your presence mean in the cafe? How are you using it well? What's your highest contribution as the owner? How are you supporting people who have been given the responsibility to be present as authorities in these specialized little pockets of your business called cafes or the roastery or the mobile team? Those are unique places that need kind of a focus area, a focused person. And so presence is really important. And it's not something that a paper can do. Okay, so the presence of a manual is not the same as the presence of a person. The presence of the person may use the manual and these tools that we have to support us, but we as people are always what it's about. Okay, so that's where I want you to focus in 2025. That word presence. How can we be that agent of clarity, agent of resourcing, somebody who is specifically affirming and then are an ardent fan of our people and a celebrator of our people, and somebody who is coaching them to higher levels of performance and tracking that performance and being that not a bad news manager, but somebody who is for them on their side. And that I think is going to be a huge step in the right direction. Okay, number 2 is going to be iteration. Iteration is different in some sense than transformation. Well, it's the same kind of thing. It's a different version of the same thing. So it's version 2, version 3, version 4, but the soul, the thing remains the same. So you have a set of values, you have a mission, and you have an idea of what you want. Year 1, year 2, year 3, you forecast out so many years. The reality of the future is often different than what you thought the future was going to be like when you were in the past. So the iteration aspect is being open to the things that you didn't think about, but actually do align with the core values of your business. And I know that some people actually redo their values every now and again. Not that they're saying, we no longer want to have integrity, we no longer believe in teamwork. No, it's more, how do we execute well on those good things by focusing on maybe a different phrase or a different goal that is going to get us there more effectively, because now we know each other better, we know our community better, the product we're more skilled as operators. And so iteration is necessary because that's what I think healthy growth looks like, is iteration. I am still Chris DiFirio, and I'm 46 years old. I used to be 10 years old. I used to be 20, 24, but I'm still the same person. There are still little, idiosyncrasies of who I am. When I look back at awkward tapes of me as a teenager, I'm like, yeah, I still do some of that stuff. That doesn't mean I am just a different person. I am still me. I'm just this version of me now. And your business has to have the ability to be flexible like that. That's what growth looks like. So you can't be nostalgic about a tree and a flower. They're not nostalgic about, oh, I wish I was still a little seedling, or I wish I was an acorn again. They just are growing, and that's a natural part of operating a business. And sometimes that means letting go. That's the hard part, is you have to let go of certain aspects of your business in order to let it open up and flower into its new stage. And if you focus too much on, no, we're gonna keep it exactly like this, like I want this, I want my kid to stay a kid forever, I want this dog to always be a puppy, then you can't. That's just not natural. That's not the way that this works. Now there are things that you can do that will, if you are saying, I want to have a certain kind of business, there's a limit to how much that business will grow. So you buy yourself a Chihuahua, you're not going to end up with a 90-pound Chihuahua. Okay, thank God. I mean, because that would be a terror. But what I'm saying here is, you say, I want to have a mobile kiosk. That mobile kiosk is never really that singular location. That's not going to employ 25 people. It's going to employ a limited number of people. And so no matter how much it grows, it has limitations. So really, you've got to think, what is it that I've planted? What is it that I have said yes to? What is in the DNA of this thing, this brick and mortar, this mobile, this concept of who we are? And you might want to grow it from mobile to brick and mortar. That's where my analogy breaks down, basically. But you basically have to say, what is it that we've got? How is it that it's going to kind of confound some of my plans? But in what ways can I draw a line from where it's growing to still being in alignment with our core values, so we can iterate on those things? We can have a new version. And I think that's what we talk about when we say these are living documents. When you have SOPs or checklists, and we joke around about how some of these checklists, they just have so many, marks through them. You have Sharpies crossing this out and that out. They're like 3 years old, and it's a different business almost, but we still haven't bothered to print a new checklist. We need to have the mindset that we are constantly renewing ourselves and refreshing. And it might not mean throwing everything out, but sometimes it allows you, like the circulation to the business, like the blood flow to the business, to create a new document, to create a new position for more people to do more things. And we've been talking in our keyholder coaching groups recently. There was somebody who was talking about how when we're scaling, we're opening up new opportunities for people who have been with us for a while to take on maybe a management role. We can pay them more. I mean, these are things that align with their values, and it's a great reason, and it feels right. It was examined, though. It is a new version of who they are. It's an iteration. So what does it look like for you in 2025 to be open to iterate your business, to be a different version of the same thing that is complementary to your values, although coming at it from maybe a different angle, to deepen the experience of your business, if you will. So be open to that. And sometimes it might be scary. Sometimes it means learning to enjoy your business a different way than initially you did. I was talking to somebody the other day about how, now that they have a general manager, we have to retool the way that they operate to support that role. But that also means that they don't get the cathartic feeling of having bailed out the cafe from an emergency, right? that it feels good to be wanted and useful, but they have to let go of that because the cafe needed some present leadership, like we talked about just a second ago, because it was iterating, because it was growing, and now they have to grow with it. So, iteration, that's a great word to remember. Now, number 3, we're going to talk about resource. We talk often about being an agent of resourcing, and that to me feels like one of the best descriptions of what a leader does. They are resourceful, they are an agent of resourcing, meaning they will find the answer, they will provide opportunities for success, clarity, and direction, and give people the tools they need to succeed. I guarantee you, you go to your coffee shop right now, there's probably 1 or 2 very small things that need to be fixed, that need to be purchased, an inventory list that needs to be updated just a little bit. Maybe you need to get a better system in place for that, for the inventory. There's a bunch of little things like that across your cafe, but you're saving yourself for the big stuff that comes up, and sometimes it doesn't come up. So with resourcing, it's actually more available to you than you think. You just have to take a close look. Like when you go to a cafe and you notice something like the paper towel dispenser is not working the right way, fix it. That's resourcing people. That's resourcing your customer with what they need to get paper towels. Your baristas, they don't like working with that nasty old sponge. Get them a new sponge. The baristas also need you to start scheduling farther out than just right before the next week. That's resourcing. What are you doing? You're resourcing them with clarity. And maybe you need to be resourceful yourself, because the reason you're so last minute with your scheduling is because you don't know how to carve out time to do the schedule in the midst of all you're doing. That means you need to kind of figure that out on your end first so that you can figure it out for them so they can have more clarity. You see how this works. But what we often do is we project what we should be doing onto other people, and we say we want our baristas to be resourceful. We've said it here many times before. Resourcefulness is often a praise that is given to baristas that is more of an indictment toward what leaders are not doing for the baristas. Some of the most resourceful things that baristas do is cover up for the mistakes and the neglect of leadership that hasn't got the first things down. So if you want to be a very effective leader and you want to see your business transformed, start in those small ways to fix those areas of resourcing that are just kind of right there on the surface, the low-hanging fruit. And then you're going to take on the identity of somebody who, and you're going to be able to zero in on bigger root issues. But if you're not focused just on the basics, you're not going to see deep enough, and you're not going to have the wisdom to know how to even handle the really root level things that will transform your business and take you to the next level and all that fun stuff. So resource your staff, figure out how to, we just talked about labor cost. Generosity might be an extra word here, but resourcing people with paying what you can, not what you can get away with. Making sure that you are being clear in your communication. The tools are there for them to do the job. The understanding is deep, and they know it by heart. And that's just the surface. We're just scratching the surface of what it means to resource people. So focus on resourcing. And these words so far: presence, iteration, resourcing, or being a resource, those are things you can order your week by. Also, how am I doing these things this week? Okay, so the next thing we're going to focus on is discovery. Discovery is kind of a lesson in humility and adventure, curiosity. We're using lots of words now to focus on discovery. But you can't discover something unless you are active. You can't be passive and just discover something. You have to have set out to discover. You have to have some kind of curiosity. Now, or curiosity someone has to be moving. You can discover that your baristas aren't doing what they are supposed to be doing because somebody comes to you and says, "Hey, I noticed this," right? So I guess there is some sort of a passive form of discovery. Now, if you want to take this word and use it well in the new year, you should be somebody who is open to say, hey, I don't know what I don't know. And I want to know. Maybe there's a better way of doing this. I'm not going to just throw myself into fits of self-doubt all the time. I'm not going to create an inferiority complex and an imposter syndrome in myself because I think, oh, I got to discover a better way to run a coffee shop because I'm probably a terrible owner and I'm probably a terrible operator. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm a big fan of honesty, and to be only negative is not being honest. Plenty of positive things out there about what you're doing. But when you discover, when you set out to discover, you're open to learning. You're open to saying, okay, now that I know this, we're going to act accordingly. We found out, I discovered this about how decaf coffee is best extracted. We discovered, a certain way that we can do it better. That's a great way to keep on the edge of the quality. Like the discoveries we're making in coffee, in hospitality, and just tricks and not tricks, but just techniques and systems and things that we can put into our cafe. When we have curiosity and we implement this idea of discovery by going to a trade show or talking and having conversations with other people, we're just bringing these things in, not to make ourselves crazy with the idea that we're comparing ourselves and saying, oh, I feel so bad that I'm not doing this. But when you have a pantry to pull ingredients from as tools to help you when you need them, you can fix more things. You can build better with the right tools, but you have to have actually purchased the tool. You have to know that tool exists. The tools you use behind the bar are important. Now, you need to just be open to discover maybe new ways to do things. That doesn't mean you're constantly changing just because you discover a new way to do something, but you're open to change, especially because you want to have a kind of culture that there's feedback. There's feedback from your baristas and your staff and your leadership team. And that's a form of discovery too, by the way. And we're going to talk about in a second here. Well, actually, let's go right into it, because the next thing here, besides discovery, is communication. Communication is something people think they do, but often they don't do it. They think I have said, and therefore people understand, and therefore they should. But people don't, and you actually haven't communicated. You haven't. Communication is not just informing somebody of something. A new definition of communication would be probably more like equipping them with understanding and competency. Communication is based on that. So that's why everyone complains about communication in the cafe or the workplace. And it's because we kind of don't like doing it. We have a lot of assumptions about our fellow humans, and that is, everybody should know this. I shouldn't have to say this. Past episode was communicate, repeat, something like that. It was basically the shift break or main episode was about, you have to repeat yourself. This is part of the job. It's part of the work. You have to remind me, because when we're in the midst of the daily work, we downgrade our mental ability significantly when we are crushed by a line of customers. Now, the best teams out there can handle those things with resiliency and calm, but even then, when you're zeroed in, you're doing your work well, but you still need the tool of repetition and reminding, not as a, I guess I have to remind them, but you get to remind them. I know there is a version of this where people just refuse to actually learn. That's a whole different thing. But there is a aspect of this work where you do have to repeat yourself. You have to use communication as a tool to continually refresh people's understanding and refocus and recenter them on the goal, because the nature of this whole thing is that we move off center all the time. Even you have to admit, if you were in their position, you'd probably do the same thing. You'd probably be tempted to get distracted here or forget there. So let's use our positions as leaders, if you're a manager, a trainer, or an owner, to use communication as a way to serve other people. So communication in the new year, I think, would best look like staying true to your schedule for one-on-ones with your staff members. Uh, there's lots of meetings that don't need to happen, but meeting together on a personal level or just one-on-one with your staff members regularly without fail is, I think, required if you want a great coffee shop. Communication is often one way. Owner, manager tells the barista what to do, barista does it. They get feedback or they don't get feedback. But the barista being able to talk to a manager or talk to their boss about something, sometimes that doesn't happen, because the boss is busy and, well, we have an open door policy. And so if you've, I'm just saying, I'm sitting here so you can come anytime. We have to be the ones to initiate. You're the one who has to actually go forth and do the thing and prove to them that you're serious about it. So when I hear people talk about how, sometimes we do one-on-ones, sometimes we don't, it's heartbreaking because I know for a fact that it would be there would be hell to pay if you didn't pay your baristas. If the money didn't reach their bank accounts, and sometimes that happens, and that's a big issue. But we know we are legally obligated and it is required to pay your staff, right? So we don't miss that. You don't not pay your taxes. Even if it's painful, you still pay your taxes. Why? Because you know the consequence of not doing that is so huge that you even in your most tired state would never think about not doing that, I hope. With one-on-ones, it's harder because you don't see the fruit of it right away. You don't see the danger of not doing it. Well, I'll tell you what, the danger here with one-on-ones and not having great communication that's others focused, that is empathetic, that is from a servant's heart toward them. You can still be a hands-on and focused, tell people what to do, how to do it. Whole Bruce Tulgan's "It's Okay to Be the Boss" book. These are not in contrast to one another. You can still serve through this strong, clear, hands-on leadership style. If you don't provide this for people, if you don't provide that one-on-one and that great communication, your whole culture starts to just sort of fall apart. People are out for themselves more often when they don't know what they're rallying around. And communication is a way, and these one-on-ones especially are a way to say what's really important here are the people. So if you want to be a people-first organization, and take care of people through coffee, through tea and pastries and fun stuff like that, then you have to make sure that you're prioritizing people. Otherwise, you're going to be missing something and it's going to feel hollow. And unfortunately, that's the reality with a lot of cafes is it's hollow. We say a lot of things, but we don't do those things hardly at all. And our behavior shows what we actually value. So in the new year, I would encourage you, at least with communication, start these one-on-ones and are very just on a regular basis. It's non-negotiable. They always happen. They don't have to be very long. They can be 15, 20 minutes per person, and your managers can conduct these. But as long as it's happening on a regular basis, it's going to plant seeds of trust and goodwill, and people will know you actually are for them. We've said a lot about one-on-ones in the past, but that's just one thing about communication that I think you should be focused on. Now, I'm going to say another word here, and it sounds like I'm getting ready to swear. That word is quality. And for some people, maybe that is a swear word, maybe I'm dropping the old Q word, quality. I am a big believer that there is a wide range of different styles of coffee that people enjoy. Quality, therefore, is how consistent are you within your chosen set of standards that achieve that chosen level of quality? So if you're a cafe that loves more developed coffees on the darker side, and you love blends, and there's an ideal way for you that you've said, you know what, I really want that molasses flavor to come out. I really want this espresso to feel just a little bit smoky and molasses and that walnut. That's the perfect espresso for us. Somebody in LA, or not to, LA's great. Sorry, but I'm just saying they have really light espresso. But somebody who has a light espresso will say, that's garbage, that's terrible, I don't like it. But the thing is, if you're consistent and you're hitting the mark that you've set out for, and you've got the recipes and the training, and you're encouraging people when they hit it, and you're coaching them when they don't, that's what quality is. And if you're in this mode of iteration and discovery, and you're being present with people, it's easier to hit quality every single time. Now, that's not to say that you're going to please everybody, of course. You have a certain group of people that are your customers that will love what you do. And you need to be pretty clear about who you are. You have to, especially with the espresso thing, you can't just have a light and a dark and a medium espresso, and it's too many choices. So you have to have kind of like this base level of decision. Frustratingly enough, you have to choose what kind of coffee bar you are going to be, at least on that base level of the espresso, unless you don't serve espresso. And some people don't. And it's kind of wild, isn't it? Like but I know that some people just do, they're a brew bar. Some people do only cold brew, and that's pretty cool. But still, there is a quality decision that you have to make. And I think really, when it comes to quality, that's what I want to focus on. You should be choosing on purpose what is being done with every drink and every menu item that you offer. And I guarantee you, so many cafes out there have not made a conscious choice to do that thing, to have a flavor profile for their mocha. We want our mocha to taste like this. We want our Americano to taste like, people hate on the Americano so much. They want their Americano to taste like that. That intentionality, it's not as present as just the default. Of course, we're going to have these things, and we're going to put our espresso in there. It's going to taste the way it tastes, and hopefully customers like it. That's the way that a lot of people do it. And so it's hard to know how to train people when you don't have a standard you're training them to, down to the level of how we move our bodies behind the bar. Who's doing what and why? Why is it important that we put the spoon on that side of the saucer? Why is it important that we stir the espresso, or we transfer to this kind of cup, or we sift the matcha? What is it that you're training people to do? It has to be based on a decision that you've made, a conscious choice, and that taste and that experience has to actually be some kind of an entry in your brain and a part of the culture. It's a goal that you're setting on the level of the menu that now everybody is going to have to be trained to do. So I am asking in 2025, let's think about what we're doing in terms of quality. How aware are you of the quality of each one of your beverages? And where do you land on your brewed coffee, on your espresso, the dial-in procedures, the cleaning procedures, the workflow of your bar? These are the base level assumptions that customers have about you as an operator. They believe that you have these things down packed. And it's not the case, because a lot of us are just kind of like hashing it out because we said yes to too many things too fast. And now we're in this position where we have to perform, but we can't even really catch up with ourselves. So I would encourage you, if you are busy right now and you're like, how do I get a handle on this? I understand it's hard. Give yourself a year. That's why we're talking about a year. Give yourself a year and say, okay, starting with the way we make espresso and steam milk, we are going to get so specific and so like, we're going to have such a great deal of understanding about what this looks like, that when we make a mistake, it's going to be obvious. I don't have to tell the baristas that it's a mistake. That's the level of knowledge we have to have of what good and quality looks like with our hospitality too. So when you're talking about guest interactions, it's hard to get baristas to recognize sometimes when guest interactions are not really great because we haven't defined what great looks like, and we haven't told stories, and we haven't said here is that quality level. We haven't trained to that level. Just like people who spot counterfeit money, they don't study the counterfeits necessarily, they study the real thing. So when there's a deviation from your deep knowledge of the real thing, you're more likely, just independently of the manager saying, by the way, did you notice that, to notice it yourself. So the same is true for the quality of your drinks. And it's an uncomfortable truth that a lot of the things that are behind maybe lower sales in the cafe have to do with inconsistency and that quality level that you wanted to have, but you haven't trained in for because it hasn't been specific enough. It's not happening, right? And maybe there are things that are getting in the way of that quality. Maybe you're not cleaning often enough, right? Maybe your roaster that you use in your cafe, or you as the roaster, have a lot to learn maybe about roasting, and you're not roasting as well as you could. See, that's where discovery comes in, right? That's where resourcing comes in. And you say, well, customers keep complaining about the sourness and the acidic, what I don't know what they're saying, but you can get defensive and say, well, they just don't get us. Or you can say, well, is let's taste our own coffee and say, do we like it? Is that what we're going for? And you have to be honest with yourself. Sometimes the answer is no. And so now it's not back to the drawing board, but how can I become a better roaster? How can I become to fully live into the ideal flavor? Or how can I become a better purveyor of hospitality to fully live into my ideal hospitality scenario for a family or a study session or just somebody who wants to drink an espresso and leave? So that's the intentionality that we have to bring to quality, and just start with the base level stuff and then become better and better across your menu and across the experience. Now, the last thing we're going to talk about, save the best for last, and that is the word joy. At the end of my talks at Coffee Fest, we talk about lots of things, but one of the presentations we talk about design of a coffee shop. And the truth is, we don't really get what we want, truly. We have constraints. I have a client in Brooklyn right now. Her cafe is going to be opening soon. It's, I think, a little under 300 square feet, maybe 270 something. And the actual operating cafe space is even less than that. It's challenging. Okay, so is it exactly what she was going for when she was dreaming up a coffee shop? Maybe not. But will it be something that if she celebrates it and just is confident and quote unquote wears it well, will it be a hit? More likely, yes. Joy is something you have to enter into, even if you're not hitting all the things that you wanted. The things that you have are often filled with opportunities to be thankful, to showcase how you love this or that, and to really use it well to serve others. Not every house is the same, but you can have awesome hospitality in the most humble of places. You can have, that connection with people. You can enjoy people enjoying things, even if it's not your cup of tea or cup of coffee. You can find joy in lots of different places, and oftentimes it feels like you're faking it. I will tell you this personally. I'll get vulnerable right here. Sometimes I am I am a huge cynic. I can be pretty negative. And so sometimes I'm really sensitive to other people being negative because I don't need any more of it, because I know that I just don't like that part of me as much. And I have to discipline myself and speak out the things that I'm thankful for and what it's actually, where's the joy in this? How do I find joy in even a challenge, even something that's a challenge? I can do that more now than I used to be able to do, because before it was like doom and gloom, and I took on the identity of somebody who was just a realist, right? Not asking you to be pie in the sky here, but there's joy in more places, in more relationships, in more of the daily operations than we actually see. And if we just slow down long enough to really look for it, activate that reticular activating system, that thing that when you're looking for a house, you see the for sale signs on the lawns. And then even after you buy your house, it takes your system a little bit of time to slow down because you notice it everywhere now. Before it was nowhere. So what you focus on, you will find. You want to find more joy in working in a coffee shop, in owning a coffee shop, in leading people. Reinforce to yourself, even if it feels distasteful in the moment, the things that you think are positive, even if they feel paltry compared to maybe what your emotions say is the overwhelming evidence for why it's really not. Okay, screw that. I'm just going to wallow. I'm going to ruminate, right? When you do that, you're digging yourself deeper in. And I've been there, been there, been there. And it's not like I don't do that myself still, but I catch myself more often. And I would encourage you to try it. In 2025, sure, there's going to be some stuff that is going to feel bad. There's going to be challenges that are outside of your control. You already know that. You're going to have to confront a barista. You're going to have to confront yourself in your own mistakes. You might hurt somebody. They might hurt you. A supplier is going to do something that you don't like, and you're going to be annoyed because you have to find a new supplier. All of that stuff's probably, I'm not saying this to be pessimistic, but it's just the way business happens. Like Danny Meyer's mentor in the book, Setting the Table, said, business is problems, but problems are a form of discovery. It's a resistance to progress. And depending on how you harness those challenges and how you perceive it, it's either happening against you or it's happening for you. And there's more joy, which we need more of, in the perception of those things happening for you. And I think that would be a great thing for you to apply to all areas of the business. So that is it. Presence, iteration, resource, discovery, communication, quality, and joy. See how we can put those things into practice in 2025. Maybe it's just little ways, but over time, it's going to lead to some big results. So thanks everybody for joining me. It was great to chat. I hope you have a wonderful new year. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas. And I am excited. I'm excited for what the new year is going to bring. And I want to say, just before we end here, thank you. That's not something that you hear very often as an owner, as somebody, if you're a manager, if you're a leader even. Thank you for the work that you do to facilitate the opportunity for other people to enjoy coffee and to enjoy the process of making coffee for others. I really do. I love you all. I am so thankful for you. I hope you have a wonderful new year. And as always, I hope that this episode has truly given you keys to the shop.